With the first pick,
Thunderstorm! Thunderstorm! Yeah, Thunderstorm!
Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Rant podcast presented by Stadium Rant. We are your hosts. We got Dan Baker, Mason Beck, Lee Cook here to break down some NFL trade deadline news, as well as some leagues got trade deadlines coming up in fantasy right now. So we want to make sure we can give you some targets, both in Redraft and Dynasty, that you can try to get ahead of those trade targets, really take your team over the top. All right, let's get into the NFL trade deadline. Some kind of splashy headlines. I don't know. Mike Williams ends up going to the Steelers. I mean, some defensive news for sure. We can touch on that if we got some extra time for sure. But Jets trade the Mike Williams to the Steelers for a 5th round pick. Biggest immediate thought is, how is this going to affect George Pickens? We've seen him take a little uptick in the deep passing work with Russell Wilson. Mike Williams, similar styled wide receiver. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Mason, why don't you hit it first?
I mean, I'm just still not going to trust Mike Williams. I'd probably trust him maybe even a little less now. It's really hard to trust starting anybody on the Steelers team, on the Steelers offense, besides Najee, who, has been questionable at some points, has had some good weeks for sure, was great 2 weeks ago. But, I mean, him and Pickens are really the only two guys I'm trusting. Maybe Mike Williams takes away a little bit from Pickens, but I'm not too worried about it. They really don't have any other competition. Mike Williams is more going to just take away from these other guys. These guys you've been maybe holding on for a chance that they can work their way into a more significant role in their offense. I think it just kind of eliminates them.
So not worried about George Pickens moving forward. Don't think it'll really take a dip on his fantasy impact too much.
Not one where you'll look at it and you'll just be like, oh, wow, Mike Williams is ruining his fantasy week.
Okay. Lee, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know that's a real big impact, honestly. I mean, in Dynasty, it may give you a little bit of reason to hold on to Mike Williams, but he's a 30-year-old receiver coming off a catastrophic injury. He's looked a little better in glimpses, but he's a better NFL edition than anything fantasy-wise at this point. The Steelers definitely needed another target. So, I mean, if you were in a real deep league and you were starting Van Jefferson, it's time to pull the plug on that. But I don't see him affecting Pickens or the youth. We know we're at tight end. He hasn't been great, but tight end, depending on where you're at, you may still need to plug and play him at times. Helps Russell Wilson a little bit. I see Russell Wilson probably the biggest beneficiary, especially in a 2-quarterback league. He's definitely startable.
Okay. So I was real quick on Pickens. I do think it'll affect Pickens just because the Steelers throw the second least in the league right now. 27.3 attempts per game. That's right behind Philadelphia. It's low enough as is, and if even one of these bomb connections go to Mike Williams instead of George Pickens, that's usually what makes George Pickens stay that or a touchdown. And I just don't love that they're similar styled wide receivers. It worked okay with it when it was Deontay and Pickens because they such different type of a route tree. But moving forward, I don't think Pickens will be too much worse off, not to the point where you're not at least flexing him. But I do think this takes away that top end potential once Williams gets acclimated in the offense. All right. And that was the next question, though. Lee, you already addressed it a little bit here. Do you trust Russ enough to stream him in positive matchups in a 1 QB redraft league?
No, I wouldn't start him in a 1 QB league unless I was real desperate and it was a 14, 16 team league. I think there's going to be better options week to week than Russell Wilson.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some tough games mixed into the Steelers' next 7 or 8 games here. But he's got Washington and Baltimore in the next 2. That's 16th and 29th against QB, adjusting for expectation. And then if you guys haven't heard of that before, it's just basically how much more or less our quarterback scoring to what they're expected to be scoring, their averages. And after that, they play Cleveland, who's right now 8th against quarterbacks in that, and then Cincinnati 28th. So we'll see. We'll be able to see. I don't think he's going to be picked up in too many leagues. Right now, Russell Wilson is only rostered in 25% of sleeper leagues. So might be able to test it out a week and still grab him on the cheap. But I do think with the easy schedule coming up and the 2 deep threats, and their running game is just not efficient. Najee has had like 1 or 2 efficient games on the season. Uh, but we'll see how it goes moving forward. The other trade we wanted to get to was the Panthers trade. They sent Jonathan Mingo to the Cowboys. Cowboys sent back a 7th, or I'm sorry, they sent back a 4th, and the Panthers added a 7th to Jonathan Mingo. That is love it. Yep. Mason hit it on the head. That is Jerry Jones' specialty. Very, very short-term solution, if any solution at all, and a 4th-round pick for him. I think they could have sent that to a team for a quality running back, which they need right now, much over a first-round bust so far. So what do you guys think? Is there does Mingo have a chance to become the wide receiver 2 this year? What percentage would you put that at of him overtaking Jalen Tolbert currently and maybe Brandon Cooks when he gets back?
I don't know. I still am not giving much value to Mingo. I mean, he couldn't beat out really any of the Carolina wide receivers. I mean, he was getting beat by Old Man Thielen, Deontay Johnson, who's a good wide receiver. Xavier Leggett was beating him out. David Moore, is that the guy I believe was even doing better than him the last couple weeks? I mean, everyone's doing better than Mingo, and you think, oh, Dak is better. Dak's out. Dak's on the IR.
Yeah,
really
that's the other thing too, right? I mean,
situation.
yeah, bad situation. 4 weeks at least with Dak going to be on the IR, and I think they already went through their bye week. But regardless, yeah, bad for a redraft for sure. In terms of dynasty, though, where are we sitting? Lee, what would you consider trading for Jonathan Mingo, if anything, in dynasty?
I wouldn't give up a 4th in dynasty for him, and they just gave up a 4th in real life for him.
That's saying something.
I don't know if you mentioned Coker, the undrafted rookie, but I mean he had far surpassed. I mean he's a guy who actually has some value and looks like going forward maybe he can be the wide receiver 2 for the Panthers. This just feels like a panic trade. It feels like making a move to make a move to try to placate a very angry fan base. And I think all it did was piss them off more, to be honest with you. If you see some of the commentary from Cowboy fans, they gave up. The Bengals gave up a 7th-round pick for Khalil Herbert. To your point, Khalil Herbert's not great, but he would be the RB1 in Dallas, and he has shown he can't be a workhorse, but he's shown he has juice. He's a good NFL running back. So for a much lower draft pick, you could have actually addressed a position of need. Instead, you get a guy who has bust written all over him for a 4th-round pick. This is NFL malpractice. This is really bad.
Yeah. It doesn't, but it almost makes me feel bad for Cowboys fans.
Never.
Right. But yeah, and that's the frustrating thing. I mean, they're your division rivals, and I have the Steelers and the Ravens, who are just two of the best run organizations long term. So frustrating. But to your point, Lee, Herbert, he's averaged over 4.6 yards per attempt in his last 2 seasons, with at least 129 attempts in each of those seasons. So it's not like it's a small amount of volume and he's just getting lucky. Like, he's been consistent on the ground. They need the run game. They could still use Rico Dowdle for passing work if they want to. But yeah, they could have done that for a 7th, I guess, and decided not to. They could have gone after a much better veteran wide receiver, since they were a win now team before Dak. But Mason,
I was going to just add, as far as you're asking, like, you look at the Cowboys schedule, as far as hoping that Dak comes back, they're playing the Eagles, They're playing the Texans and they're playing the Commanders their next 3 games. They will be fairly significant underdogs in all 3 of those games. They lose those 3, they're 3-8 going to a Giants game. They struggled with the Giants. Hear a little echo there. They struggled with the Giants with Dak. So if they could very well be 3-9. And what motivation does he have to come back at that point?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, it's been ugly. It doesn't look like it's getting any better. If anything, when your star quarterback goes down, you should be trading away assets for draft picks. But not how Jerry Jones does things. Mason, did you have anything to add on that?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Bears, the last trade here, Bears trade Khalil Herbert to the Bengals for a 7th round pick. We were just talking about it. Big question. I mean, Zach Moss goes down to injury. He's out for the rest of the year with a neck injury. Hope he makes a full recovery. But let's talk about Chase Brown and Khalil Herbert. How much will Khalil Herbert eat into the running game, at least? We know he's not much of a pass-catching running back, at least in his time with Chicago. But how much do you think he eats into the running work for Chase Brown? And do you think if at any point he surpasses Chase Brown as the main ball carrier?
He's going to hurt. I mean, Zach Moss had been kind of phased out, but Zach Moss did not look good running the ball out of the shotgun, especially. Yeah. And that's what the Bengals like to do a lot. You mentioned how efficient Herbert has been. And again, he's a guy who, he's not going to excel with 20, 25 touches, but he's explosive and he can make stuff happen with that, 8 to 12 touches a game. And I think both of them are going to get work. Chase Brown's obviously the guy you want to start at this point, but it's a situation to keep your eyes on because I definitely could see it being split, especially if the Bengals can reel off a few wins. You're not giving away that pick, and I know it was a 7th, but you're not trading for him without intentions to use him. I don't think Herbert's just a depth piece. They're going to use him.
Mason?
I mean, I'm going to say Chase Brown all the way. I'm not too worried about Herbert. There's been times where obviously in the past he's had some big games where he's broke for some big plays, put up some very solid fantasy numbers. He's never been a very consistent guy. I don't think that's really there's going to be much consistency from Herbert. I think he's going to take away a little bit of the groundwork from Chase Brown. But I mean, Chase Brown's been looking solid, especially in the passing game. Fantasy, I don't think his efficiency is the best. So maybe, if Herbert is really efficient, they do it. But I mean, I just see it's still Chase Brown's job. Herbert's just going to be a nice change of pace back. He's going to get less work than Moss did. So Chase Brown should just see more work than what we've seen.
I think that Chase Brown is going to turn into the receiving back here. Zach Moss was getting more of that work while they were both on the field together. Moss out for the rest of the year. Chase Brown's going to step into that role because Herbert really does not do that. Most receptions he's had in a season is 20. Chase Brown has that explosiveness, and he's going to have the role to start with. And if I feel like if there's some fumbles that come into play, if there's some inefficient games, some maybe even like a couple plays where he takes big losses. I forgot the exact number, but I looked it up at the beginning of the year. It was Chase Brown and Jerome Ford who had taken the most negative plays in the league last year, and it was by a decent amount. So Chase Brown, I do think that he has the more upside. They put draft capital into him by selecting him. It's not just a 7th round, 8-game trial basically for Khalil Herbert. But Khalil Herbert, the thing I do disagree with Mason, I do think he's been consistent when given the work. Like 2023, he had every time he had above 10 digits or 10 touches out of the backfield and on the ground, he was 5 yards per clip, literally every single game. Yeah. And then in 2022, same thing, 10 rush attempts or more per game. He was 4 rushing yards or more per game, and most of them are 5 or above. He's consistent when he gets the work. He just never really was leaned on. So yeah, I do think that there's a chance he could surpass Chase Brown just in terms of rush attempts per game over like the last 3 games or so in the season. It's going to take some time though. So Chase Brown's safe moving forward. It's a passing offense. The Bengals pass, I believe, the most in the league right now. Chase Brown's going to be the receiving back. By no means be worried. Don't not start him, but just be aware that Khalil Herbert is lurking in the background, ready to take over if Chase Brown goes down for any reason. All right. Which of these 3 trades is going to have the biggest fantasy impact? Reminder for our listeners, Jets trade Mike Williams to the Steelers. Panthers trade Jonathan Mingo to the Cowboys. Bears trade Khalil Herbert to the Bengals.
I must say Mingo, and not necessarily this season. I'm going to say off season, because I think this Dallas team is really going to be breaking down a lot this offense. And who knows, Jerry Jones. They don't really have a ton of money to spend on any big name receivers. They got a lot of other holes they got to touch. They're still going to be pretty lacking at the wide receiver position. I think in the offseason, if you hear a couple good reports about Mingo, his value is going to at least go up to where he becomes a tradable asset, and maybe you can get something. That's more the biggest impact. I don't really see performance-wise, though, a huge deal.
I'd say Herbert, because really, to me, he's the only guy who could really emerge as a starter. Something happens with Chase Brown. Like you said, he fumbles. Maybe we've never seen him with anything close to this workload. Obviously, it's only his second year, but injury. They don't have anything else really behind Khalil Herbert, and this is still an explosive offense. Excuse me. With all the problems they've had on defense, they're still able to score points. So to me, Herbert's the only guy out of those 3 who could potentially find his way into your lineup come playoff time, fantasy playoff time. But I will also add, go ahead. I'll add. You go ahead. I'll add after.
Okay. Yeah. So I agree with that. Herbert is the one that I think has the biggest impact. Agreed for the reasons, and then on top of it, just the best offense of the 3, especially for his role. So, all right, yeah, back to you, Lee.
So this sounds like a little bit of a homer. Me always bringing it around to talk about Washington. Honestly, I think the Marshawn Lattimore trade probably has more fantasy impact than any of these offensive players, just from a standpoint that early on in the season, Washington was a team you wanted to start your quarterbacks and wide receivers against. Last 4 weeks, they've been the 4th best defense against wide receivers. Some of that has been we've given up some rush work. They've given up some running yards. But you add Lattimore to a defense that was already ascending, this could be a matchup to avoid. Obviously, you're going to start your real top end. You're going to start your A.J. Browns. Even CeeDee Lamb with Cooper Rush. If Marshawn Lattimore is in there and healthy, you can't bench CeeDee Lamb, but that's a scary start now. And if you have a borderline wide receiver, I'm scared to start him against Washington, assuming Lattimore is healthy and gets on the field.
Damn, I was really hoping that Tampa Bay played Washington later in the year so we could get another Mike Evans, Marshawn Lattimore matchup. But maybe we'll see that in the postseason. Both teams look like they have a good shot of meeting up there. So I do love
him week 1 against Tampa. If Mike Evans ate us up in week 1, we could have definitely used him, 8 weeks ago.
Okay, so there you go. Yeah, I do think that's going to be a big impact. And I mean, if you do think it's going to be that big of an impact for your defense, do you think that it's going to be negatively impacting either Jaden Daniels or Terry McLaurin, since you won't have to be passing your way back into games as frequently?
Yes and no. And a lot of this is there's 8 games left. The schedule, Dallas twice, Philly twice. Those Philly games, I'm still happy to play. And I know their defense has played better, but we're going to have to score points to beat them. The Dallas games, Pittsburgh, their defense is so good. It's a scary start, but they played so well, you have to start them. They got the Saints and the Titans. Those are both teams that I'm still rolling them out, no questions. And then also the Falcons in there. Another team that has a good enough offense where we're still going to need to score points. So it does maybe tempers expectations a little bit, but I think they're still a very reliable offense. Especially Jaden. I mean, Terry had 2 catches for 19 yards, but 2 touchdowns this past week, and you'll take that, but you'd like to see some more targets. A lot of those went to Noah Brown after the Hail Mary. He was kind of rewarded. So we'll see, but you're still at this point. You're definitely starting Jaden Daniels every week. You're starting Jaden
for sure. All right. Let's get into our trade targets here. We're going to start off in the redraft realm. Mason, I want to hear yours first. Who are you thinking for your redraft trade target?
Well, my redraft, we won't spend a ton of time on because we just kind of talked about him. It's Chase Brown. Like I said, going forward, like we said, this Bengals team, they pass. Very explosive offense. Chase Brown is going to be the receiving back guaranteed now with Zach Moss there. Like I said, the running situation is a little worrying. And, you're not giving – when I'm saying trade for Chase Brown, I'm not saying give up your top assets or anything like that. I'm saying, if you're desperate – if you need another running back, can try to trade some flex guys, something like that to try to get him in as your RB2 the rest of the season. I think that's a pretty safe bet going forward. I think he's going to have some big boom games like he did last week. There's also going to be some games where I think he's going to be sitting around like 10, 11 points in PPR leagues. I just think he's a safe play going forward with a lot of upside as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. There's going to be a lot of volume heading his way, at least at the beginning. I definitely think that Chase Brown is going to be sought after. So I personally, believing that Khalil Herbert will eventually eat into his work, more so consider Chase Brown a trade away target. Everyone's thinking, like what you were saying, Zach Moss is gone, Chase Brown will eat. But I would rather get somebody, in my opinion, like more reliable over the years, like even like an Aaron Jones. I feel like that's almost on the board right now, despite Aaron Jones' hot start. With a little bit of him missing a couple of games for injury, I think that deal could potentially get done, or maybe with a throw-in. Lee, where would you stand on that side of trade? Chase Brown, let's say, plus Deontay Johnson or something, right? Like that, someone disappointing, but still has name value.
I mean, if you could get him for Deontay Johnson, I would certainly. But you're talking about Aaron Jones versus Chase Brown, or Chase Brown for Deontay Johnson?
I was throwing in Deontay Johnson as the add-in along with Chase Brown. If you can do Chase Brown, Aaron Jones straight up, but I feel like we'd all take Aaron Jones, right?
Yeah. I would take the Aaron Jones side. I don't hate what Mason's saying, but I kind of tend to agree with you that I think the price, especially with Moss being out for the season now, the price is probably going to be too high. If you're going to get him, it's got to be this week. They're on a bye. If it's a team that needs a win, that is running back needy, you might be able to send a Rico Dowdle and another piece, or you might be able to upgrade your wide receiver or your running back position there. But I think beyond this week, the price probably gets too high once he's playing after the bye week.
They are playing against Baltimore this week. They play tomorrow, and then they have the Chargers, and then they're bye. But yeah, I do think that the time is now. I think he pops the most in the next couple of games while Herbert's getting acclimated. So I do agree with that still. Mason, did you want to rebuttal?
No, I mean, I think I said my point. We already touched it enough earlier.
Word. All right, Lee, who do you got here for your redraft trade target?
It's gonna carry volume. So
what?
What Mason?
I was saying I think the receiving work is just going to carry the volume entirely.
Got you.
My bad on the bye week. When I was looking at the Bengals schedule, it had this week's game up top, so I didn't see it. Appreciate the correction. So I'm going Mike Evans, and I do think there's a couple of reasons here. So he's out for another week, and then they have a bye week next week. So especially if he's on a team that needs to win, a team that's in that, if it's a 16 playoff league, if he's in that, I mean, it's 16, not 16, that 4 to 8 range on a team that needs to win to try to get in the playoffs, they maybe can't sit on him for 2 weeks. And he's a guy, if you look at his schedule, once he's expected back after week 11. So obviously with the injury, He's had hamstring problems throughout his career, but generally he's a guy who doesn't miss a ton of time. He's kind of shown resiliency where he does come back and play over the years after these injuries. You're looking at the Giants as his first game back, the Panthers, the Raiders leading into your playoff run. Harder matchup in the first round of playoffs with the Chargers, but it ends with Dallas, who could have already given up. Maybe they already have, but who knows what Dallas looks like by week 16. And then a championship week against the Panthers. If you can give me that kind of run of 6 games at the end of your season with only one really matchup that stands out as tough, I think you can get him at a discount, and he could be a league winner for you to close the season. Also, Chris Godwin being gone, when he gets back and he's on the field, he is going to eat. He's going to get a ton of targets. I'm trying to buy Mike Evans right now.
I mean, I do agree it's a good buy. It's Mike Evans. If he's healthy, he's going to produce, and especially with Godwin out. I mean, Aden's obviously producing. He's been the biggest winner. No other wide receiver has really stepped up massively. I mean, obviously they've came in when they needed some of answered the call at the right time. But no one really stood out as like, oh, they're going to be taking away a lot of targets away from Evans when he comes back. I just think, I mean, Bucks are in that situation where they're going to be needing to compete, I think, to the very end of the season. Mike Evans, like you said, the schedule. I just think once he's back, it's good to go. Mike Evans is going to be really pushing it for that 1,000-yard season. I don't know how close he was or what his yardage was before he got hurt, but, he's going to be trying to give it everything he can to reach that 1,000-yard mark.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up. It's just like, I mean, he's at right now 335 yards. If he comes back, he says,
I think it's
I don't know. If you can make this game, he's got 7 games left in his season. So that's 100 yards a game. I expect Mike Evans to hit 1,000 yards because it's never not happened. So let's make it happen, Mike Evans. There's no Chris Godwin here to get in the way right now. The other wide receivers, Baker's been having the best year of his career, in my opinion. And he's making the other wide receivers look decent. He's putting the ball where it needs to be, but he needs that alpha back. And Mike Evans is going to come back from injury, and the only thing I think that can stop him is injury. So this offense looks good. Baker looks good. Mike Evans should be good, and I agree. You can get him now while people are still worried about the injury, especially if they're a lower record team, just like you were saying.
I mean, I'll throw a name out there. George Pickens. Would you trade George Pickens right now?
Taking Mike Evans all day. Yeah. Higher passing volume and like true alpha.
If you can afford to potentially lose this week, yeah.
Yeah, I'm taking that for sure. So we have one last redraft trade target. I put Tyrone Tracy on the board. He has been stepping up in a big way for the Giants. Went from a 24.5% snap share up to a 68.6% snap share. The first 4 games, he was not involved. His last 5 games, he's been very much involved. He's gone to 15.4 rush attempts over those last 5 games, 82.6 rushing yards. He's got 2 touchdowns over those 5 games. Been a little bit less consistent with the passing volume now. I don't know why they necessarily went down. They had a couple of games where they were trailing big during that 5-game span. But his passing work has gone down. It's 3 targets, 2.6 receptions, and 15 receiving yards over those 5 games. And that's largely on the back of one of those games where he caught all 6 of his targets for 50-plus yards. So I don't know why the passing work has gone down, but the schedule moving forward, Carolina, Tampa Bay, Dallas, New Orleans, Baltimore, Atlanta, and Indy. I would say 5 of those 7 teams can put up decent points. They're going to be trailing a good amount. Passing work should go up, and the rushing work's there. Devin Singletary during that time, 5.6 touches per game, only has topped 4 points, or he hasn't topped 4 points in half PPR formats. So they've made a shift in their philosophy. They're going Tyrone Tracy, and either way, the Giants have shown that they will lean on one running back rather than running back by committee, no matter who it was. So I think this is really the time to jump in on him, even though he's been getting the volume. Last game was a little bit tougher for him in half PPR formats. Tracy had 7.4 points, 22 points 2 weeks ago, and then 4.7 points. So some managers might be a little bit worried about that inconsistency. I don't think it's going to be a problem. He does have the fourth easiest schedule for running backs moving forward, again, versus expectations. So it weighs in the past, the defenses, how they've done against past competition at their level. It's not just how much points have they given up. So if they faced, Christian McCaffrey, not that he played, Derrick Henry, all the top running backs, and this is going to weigh that into consideration. So great tool. I'm plugging a different podcast here, but fantasy footballers, pay the $5 and get these tools. It'll help you throughout the season. Receiving volume is the only concern. Do you guys think Tyrone Tracy, where would you have him for rest of season rankings?
So one, if you are paying that $5, use code Fantasy Rant. You're not going to save anything.
I would love that.
Tell them we sent you. So ranking him rest of the season, I think he's right outside of RB1. I think he's a high-end RB2 in that 14 to 18 range. And the Giants, they're 2-7. They're not going to the playoffs. There's no world, and they're pretty horribly mismanaged, so maybe they do something crazy. But there's no world where they should go back to Devin Singletary. You've got the rookie. You want to see what you have. You want to build for your future, and he right now looks like he could be a building block for the future. So he should get all the run. Daniel Jones is still awful. You've got to run the ball, and yeah, I mean, I like him a lot in redraft. I like him even more in dynasty. Do worry about long term, but I think next year he could creep into RB1 territory, back in RB1 as a dynasty asset.
Yeah, I think he's definitely good for the rest of the season. Like you said, the schedule's pretty nice going forward. Since week 5, Tyrone Tracy's taken over completely, and he's just gotten a very good workload. It's a very solid workload every single week besides against the Eagles. I think that was like week 7, 8, something like that. And I mean, the passing volume should increase a little bit more the last couple of weeks. Like you said, Dan went down. With that.
Oh, you went muted just there.
Yeah, I don't know why it keeps muting me. I think my Wi-Fi is like really messed up right now or something.
Computer.
It's not me this time. I'm not muting you, I promise.
Is the AI takeover? Oh,
Did it again.
It's not me.
Yeah, no, I don't know what's happening. Yeah,
AI bot made.
You think he is solid? Just the workload going forward and the easy schedule. He could definitely be on the safe side. He's a back end RB2, high end. He could be back in RB1.
Yeah, I'm right in that rankings with you guys. Like mid RB2 right now. And over the last 5 games, he was the RB13 during that time. Granted, the Giants did not have a bye, and plenty of teams did, but still helps out. RB13, getting him off the waiver wire. All right, so let's move on to redraft. And I did almost make Tyrone Tracy my I'm sorry. Let's move on to dynasty. And I almost made Tyrone Tracy my dynasty target just because he is still pretty youthful. But he's 24. 24 for a rookie is not great. All right, guys, let's send it back Mason's way. Start us off again. Who is your dynasty trade target?
You guys are not you're not ready for it. You won't believe
it's not even filled in the show doc, so I don't know what you're going to tell us.
You won't believe what I'm going to say. It's Bo Nix. Sorry, that was really stupid, but I had to do it.
I was built up. I was like, who is this name? Drop this magical piece right now. But no, we know you like.
Yeah, this is Bo Nix. I mean, right now he's
at this point. I think we need to make the change.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at. I don't know if it was 4 or 6 point passing. If it was 4 or 6 point per passing touchdown
Passing
league.
touch.
I was looking at it. Bo Nix is currently QB8. I mean, he's looking good. I mean, Broncos are beating all expectations. Yeah, he's a little older, and that still kind of is scary for a rookie quarterback, but it doesn't matter as a quarterback. You got a lot more time with them, so that's not really worrying me. Sean Payton's coaching him great. They don't really have much, and he's still producing a very solid amount. I mean, Cortland Sutton's really the only major target right now. I mean, they have a couple other guys doing some things. But I mean, Bo Nix has also ran the ball so much better than everyone thought he was going to at the NFL, and it's produced a lot of fantasy points. And he's been producing. Last week they got blown out by the Ravens, but he still ended up producing a good fantasy week. And I think that's going to continue. Sean Payton started trusting him a lot more and really opening up the playbook, letting him run these plays that produce a lot more consistently higher fantasy weeks.
Yeah, per PFF, Bo Nix, our QB5 in terms of rushing yards. He's got the third most rushing touchdowns on the year, and no one thinks of him in this light. You know, like Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Jaden Daniels, and Lamar Jackson are the only QBs ahead of him right now. So I hear what you're saying. It's the cheat code, and he's passing well enough to add the stats that you need in fantasy. QB8 is in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. To back up your point, Lee, how do you feel about Bo Nix as a dynasty trade target?
I don't like it. I don't like it because I think you'd be trading for him at a potential all-time high value. I'm much more of a buy low guy when I can in Dynasty. I don't see his value increasing from where he's at right now. As a rookie, he's shown the flashes. He did end up with a decent game last week. He caught a touchdown pass, which really was the difference between a bust like a 12-point week, 11 or 12-point week, and having a solid game. The rushing yards do help, but again, I don't know how sticky that is going to be for him going forward. And as a passer, I have real concerns about his long-term future.
All right, so let's put it to the test. Right now, Keep Trade Cut has Bo Nix listed as QB15. Right behind him, Lee, I'm going to have you start off at least. We're going to list at least the next 4 or 5 quarterbacks after him, see who you'd rather have.
Okay.
Bo Nix or Jared Goff?
Jared Goff.
Bo Nix or Trevor Lawrence?
Trevor Lawrence.
Bo
I thought
Nix
about that one a little more.
What'd you say?
So I had to think about that one a little bit more. I'm still pretty angry with Trevor Lawrence for throwing away the game against the Eagles last week.
Yeah.
He should.
And I mean, now his wide receivers are at least hampered for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
But shockingly, they are only Trevor Lawrence, 25.1 years old. Bo Nix, 24.7 years old. So not far off in age. Next one, I think we would have the same answer. Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy?
Bo Nix, JJ is completely unproven.
Yeah, and Sam Darnold's having success.
I mean, and like even right now, would you rather take Bo Nix or JJ? And then, as a fact right now, if you have Nix in Dynasty, you can trade him for McCarthy and plus.
I totally get the buy low argument for Lee. I will say I'm more on Mason's side for this one. I not just JJ McCarthy, but just as a trade for a target. Has Cortland Sutton and who else on that team? And he's QB8. Like, as a rookie, like that's a lot of things that would not add up. Like Caleb Williams has it made for him right now, and he's not putting up Bo Nix numbers. If Caleb Williams had that offensive line, that granted his is terrible too, but if he had that offensive line and wide receiver core, not even a run game to like balance things out, Caleb Williams would be forgotten about by next season almost. Like Bo Nix is doing impressive things.
I mean, yeah, like honestly, who's winning these games for the Broncos? Like on the offense, obviously the defense is playing a big
right. I was gonna say the defense, but then yeah, not last.
But Javonte's not looking great on the ground. He's helping in the passing game a little bit, obviously, right. But it's Bo Nix, man.
So I would argue that if you put Caleb Williams, I obviously the talent, especially at the skill positions, is better with the Bears. But I would argue that if you swap and you gave Caleb Williams a competent play caller, I think Shane Waldron is as big a problem for Caleb Williams as anything. I think you would see Bo Nix probably produce less with the Bears just because of how bad the play calling is. The O-line's bad, but the play calling has really hampered them. And I think you see a night and day turn. I still have a little animosity towards the Bears fans because it's all the Jaden hate. But I'm pulling for Caleb Williams. He's shown enough flashes. Like I said, you just got to get a competent play caller in there. You put Ben Johnson calling plays for that offense, and it's a whole different story. I would probably take J.J. McCarthy. Back to that original question.
Yeah.
Because he's tied to Justin Jefferson for the next 4 seasons after this. The skill position, like, again, I don't know how sustainable the running part of Bo Nix's game is going to be. And he needs a lot of upgrades around him to really be elite. Again, I know he's QB 8 right now. If you want to take a bet, Mason, I'll say he will not finish as a top 12 QB, even though he's 8 right now.
Done. Believe.
Believe.
Who's after JJ? I'm curious.
Yeah. So the next guy,
shaky, huh?
The next one, I mean, older quarterback just got injured. Dak Prescott at QB 19, 31.3 years old. Did just get the contract. Is tied to CeeDee Lamb. Same type of argument. And 32 is not too old if we're talking just moving forward.
I'd take Dak.
Dallas
that's
just
spicy. That's
Dallas
8
is
years or
dude,
7 years.
Dallas is just crumbling. Like, you really take Dak over the upside of Bo Nix leading this youthful this terrible offense. Which
with that contract, I feel like Dak's a guaranteed starter for at least the next 3 seasons. Playing in that 3-year window. CeeDee Lamb's going to be there as well. I don't know if Bo Nix is a starter for 3 seasons. We'll see. He looks like he's going to be now, but I still feel like the passing piece of his game is going to have to improve quite a bit.
Are we saying – I feel like it could come down to this. Are we saying 4-point per passing touchdown leagues or 6-point per passing touchdown leagues? I want to make it specific.
Oh, for the bet, 4.
That's what we've been talking about, so I do feel that's fair.
Yeah, and that gives me more of an advantage because Bo Nix doesn't throw much touchdowns, but he'll run them in or catch them for some reason.
All right, so the last quarterback that I think we need to bring up, Tua Tagovailoa or Bo Nix. Injury concern, still young, 26.7 years old. Got talented wide receivers around him. A year ago, it was Mike McDaniel's the genius. Now it's like, they can't get much going. I think it's the hardest of them.
Well, I'm obviously going Bo because we've had 2 seasons where, in the last 3 years, 2 seasons where Tua has left the field and we've looked at it saying, wow, he is not okay. That's not, this last thing, there's talks the first time, is Tua going to retire? If he takes one more hit, there's no way that dude comes back in. There's no possible way. There's no way that in a couple years that Tua does not have CTE or something.
Whoa, buddy. Whoa, let's not.
Whoa. Yeah, I agree. Whoa.
Not on anybody. I do wish you were guarding
right here. No Antonio Brown, please, moving forward. Just a public announcement for the rest of the NFL. Please don't do what Antonio Brown has done with his Instagram Live. No one needs to see that. No one needs to see a booty. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lee.
I don't know what you're talking about, and thankfully so.
You never saw that?
No.
Oh, my God. We'll talk after the show. We don't need to.
This one's a little more nuanced. If I'm trying to win right now, and I feel like I can win a championship this year, I'd rather have Tua starting for the rest of the season. Long term, because of the concussion issues, I still, again, maybe I'm crazy. I feel like you could get Bo Nix plus for Tua just because the offense he's in. If I could get a little extra, I would probably go Bo Nix there, just because I don't know. I don't know that he's long for the NFL. And honestly, one more concussion, and he probably should retire. We'll see
Right.
if he does, but you don't want to see somebody's quality of life be drastically affected because of the game they play. And he's made over $100 million already. So
On top of
Right.
all of it, like I mean,
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't want anything to happen to Tua. I'm just saying,
Right.
you know, one
Right.
hit away is like we got to be realistic looking at stuff.
Exactly. We all wish the best for Tua and any NFL player for the most part. Fuck you, Deshaun Watson. But outside of him, we're all wishing the best for these guys, and I think that Bo Nix is going to be a reliable chess piece for Sean Payton for the next 4 or 5 years at the bare minimum. And Tua is you're sitting there, even just as a fantasy manager, you're just waiting for that hit. You're worrying nonstop. No one wants to have to do that.
So is their offense, is this scheme good enough? Could we just have, I know, on defense, they have a QB spy. You got a linebacker that spies a running quarterback. Could we get a fullback to be a Tua spy and just escort him anywhere he goes on the field?
Anywhere. Okay, I like that. I like that. Yes. Even on a running play, like
Yes.
the fullback is not leading the running back, he's staying by Tua.
Yeah.
That's some like presidential escort type stuff.
Yes.
Get down, Tua.
Get
If
out!
we do that, we need to bring back some guy with the Mike Allstott, like full neck
Neck roll.
pad.
They got to have the
Yeah,
neck
the
roll.
neck roll, man. Like that, a guy's gonna deliver a hit if he's got that neck roll on. Is that even
intimidating.
legal at this point? I felt like just stabilizing your head to be a torpedo at whoever you're hitting. All right. So we touched on our first target here. Let's get on to our second one. Somebody who I would have expected Mason to put down. Lee, talk about your boy here, Dynasty trade target.
Yeah. So again, kind of back to my previous point with Dynasty, especially, I'm trying to buy a guy who I expect their value to increase. Obviously, Dynasty is really it's a stock market. You're buying assets, hoping they appreciate. You're trying to get rid of them before they depreciate. Brandon Ayuk did not have a good season. He had one good game after his contract, the holdout, and then now the catastrophic injury. He's only 26 years old. He just got a big contract. He's in Kyle Shanahan's offense. I think you can get him for a very reasonably cheap price. And long term, over the next couple of seasons in that 2 to 3 year window, I do see him as a wide receiver one. We don't know what's going to happen with Debo. We know the financial woes that the 49ers are in. Debo is probably not long for that offense. So I just see I see a lot of increase in volume for his targets going forward. And again, it might be halfway through next season before you get a return, but I do think you can get him fairly cheap. Just thinking of some guys right now, like Jordan Addison. Would you trade Jordan Addison for Brandon Ayuk if you're not a contender?
Dude, I don't
I'll
know.
take-
Jordan Addison is hurting me so much.
I'll
just
take
want him
Ayuk.
gone.
I'll take Ayuk. There's a decent chance Debo's gone. Probably not next year with the contract after they restructured it, but the year after he could be gone. Christian McCaffrey has this injury that seems like it could be, lingering. Could come back, at least temper his volume right now. George Kittle's getting older and older. He's dominating right now, and he's always been great when leaned on. But really, if Brandon Ayuk gets back to full health, he's the wide receiver one they need, like the actual intermediate to down threat that Kyle Shanahan targets so frequently in his offense. That's why we saw Juwan Jennings pop off in the game where he had to fill in. He's that intermediate to deep threat, and like Brandon Ayuk is top tier when he's at full health, not having to go through these weird contract disputes. And it really does seem like that has been affecting players around the league. CD also got off to a slow start. But yeah, I like Ayuk as a trade target. Mason, what do you think?
I mean, I just want to say Kittle, as long as he's on the football field, he will always be a threat. So that
He's
will
a
be a
beast.
worry for whoever's on the Niners, and because he probably will be a Niner the rest of his career. But no, I do like Ayuk. I mean, his value's down. Terrible start to the season. You could have probably bought him for lower than his true value was before he even got hurt. Right now, there's a lot of teams definitely desperate to move on. If you're a non-contender, he's definitely a good shot because even next in the off season, Ayuk's value is going to go up because he's going to be healthy. There's a good chance maybe Debo's gone. Ayuk's value will go up at least from here. It can't go much more down, at least before the start of next season. He's definitely a good buy low.
Yeah. So this, I'm sorry. Did you have anything else to add, Lee?
No, I was going to add, but I didn't want to interrupt Mason. That I'm pretty sure I was the highest on Kittle preseason of us.
We do have our for Dynasty. You're saying?
Whichever rankings we did, I know I was really high on him.
We did Dynasty, so I mean we have the rankings. I'm up next, so I'm gonna hit my target here. But if you guys want to pull up the rankings, we can see who's gotten the highest. All right, so my Dynasty trade target is Jalen Waddle. Your point leads into mine just the tiniest bit. Right now, Jalen Waddle, 25.9 years old. He is wide receiver 68 on the season. That is the lowest you're like just with people's expectations for this current season to having the injuries that he's had, and then also Tyreek Hill still being on this team. This is, I think, the lowest Jalen Waddle's trade value will ever be. Right now, Keep Trade Cut has him listed as wide receiver 25. I said Ayuk led into this because I got 5 players on either side of Waddle's ranking to compare. I want to hit you guys with these players, and let's throw Ayuk's name into the mix. So when we say, first off, we'll say, who'd you rather have in Dynasty? Let's just call it a half point PPR. Jalen Waddle or Brandon Ayuk?
I'm going to take Ayuk.
Ayuk?
Just because Waddle all season has shown inconsistency. And yeah, the quarterback play without Tua has been bad. Tua's maybe, a little slow coming back. They really could be easing him in a lot more after the injury. But Waddle's been a disappointment all season. He was a disappointment all season last year. I mean, what if he's a disappointment next year as well? Are we still like, oh no, it's Jalen Waddle? He had that one good season. We're still super big on him. I mean,
Is that one good season?
What has Jalen Waddle done in the last 2 years besides like 1 or 2 games that has given you a reason to think Jalen Waddle is a top tier receiver?
Lee?
It's tough. The injury is what would worry me when doing this comparison, but yeah, I would lean Ayuk just because of the being tied to Purdy, the uncertain future of Tua is a big part of that. You have to think the 49ers do re-up Purdy, and he's going to be in that. Both are in really good offenses. Obviously, McDaniel he was best friends growing up with Kyle Shanahan, so it's very similar.
That's going to be my new point. Like one is the Shanahan tree, and one came off of the Shanahan tree.
Yeah.
So like I'd rather have Shanahan. So I agree with that, and I do think that Purdy's going to be more reliable in terms of his future. I do think that the Dolphins, and this is pure reading tea leaves, how do they not get a very reliable backup next year? Like, I know Joe Flacco will be 87 years old by next season, but like a guy like that can just run the damn offense, not be. I'm actually blanking. What's the backup's name right now in Miami?
Skylar Thompson. Is he their backup?
So forgettable. I think that's who ended up
Tyler
playing
Huntley
the
got
snap. I know
hurt.
they bring in Tyler Huntley, but like Skylar Thompson was sitting on that roster as their primary backup heading into the season. That's bad management. Just go and get the Joe Flacco $4-5 million contract for a season. But yeah, I think that they learn from their mistakes. They go and get a reliable backup, and if Tua does go down, then they'll have at least somebody who can operate. I like Jalen Waddle over Brandon Ayuk because of the injury. If we could guarantee Ayuk comes fully healthy, I would take Ayuk off of the injury. Next one, I think we'll all be in agreement: Keon Coleman or Jalen Waddle. Mason, it's going to be a speed round for you, I guess.
I'm gonna go Coleman.
Okay,
And
I would take Waddle there.
I know Waddle's probably the bigger one, but I mean Coleman's looking good. Coleman, like we've talked about, we don't ever think he's going to be a top 12 guy, but I think he's shown for a rookie season, he's shown that he can really work his way into a very solid wide receiver too going forward. Waddle's just, I'm so tired of him, man. I have Waddle in so many leagues, and I'm just like looking at him week after week, just so disappointed. So it could just be I have a really foul taste in my mouth with Jalen Waddle, but I'm over him.
You said Coleman or Waddle?
You said 2 weeks in a row, really quick, Mason. You said 2 weeks in a row that Coleman's been looking solid. I think he's flashed potential, but I don't think he's been looking consistent or solid.
Well, no, last week he did bad, right?
Last week was bad. He had 1 catch for 21 yards off 2 targets. He's had 2 games with over 7 targets. His snap percentage has started to jump up in the last 3 weeks. He had 3 games above 70% snaps. Now he's got another 3 after week 7. I just don't think that he's been showing what they're drafting him to be. I think they add weapons to this passing attack in the years upcoming. The Dolphins don't use anybody in the passing game other than 2 wide receivers and 1 pass catching running back. They don't go after the tight end too often. Jonnu Smith's had a little bit of luck the last 2 or 3 weeks, but they don't consistently target anybody outside of the top 2 guys, and they got them locked up for multiple years moving forward.
But I would rather take Coleman plus, honestly, because you can get Coleman and more for Waddle.
Right, but we're just saying Waddle or Coleman straight up.
Nah, it really could be. I just have such foul taste in my mouth of Waddle. But
Lee, where do you stand on it?
Yeah, on that, I would definitely go Waddle. I mean, he's been a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. Coleman has potential, but I don't know that he'll ever get to a top 10 spot. And Tyreek Hill's eventually going to retire, and so even if the quarterback situation does change, Waddle is still very young. Health is a concern, but the potential, what we've seen on the NFL field has been so much greater for Waddle up to this point. Injury season's notwithstanding.
The next player is the only player of these 5 guys that I'm saying that I would take above. Yeah, I appreciate you, Lee. So Tank Dell's the next guy up. Wide receiver 28, comparison to Waddle at wide receiver 25. I would take Tank Dell above Jalen Waddle right now. He's a little bit younger. He was an older prospect coming into the league. But I would take him, even though they're around the same age. Stephon Diggs has the injury, and I think I'm pretty sure his contract runs up after the season. So Tank Dell above Waddle for me. You guys sit on the same boat?
Yeah, I would. And I mean, honestly, even with Nico coming back once he's healthy, it's going to open up a lot more space for Dell. Diggs, obviously, it was Diggs and Nico. But now Nico, once he's back, he should open up a lot more space for.
Yeah.
I think I'd still go Waddle. Again, Tank Dell had a good rookie year, but Nico's clearly the number 1. I just see a path to wide receiver 1 on this team being much more attainable and closer for Waddle.
All right, let's sneak this last. We're not going to be able to sneak it in. The name's Terry McLaurin at wide receiver 27. I know Lee's going to have something to say for longer than at least 1 minute. So for now, we're going to thank you guys out there in Atlanta. We're sorry if the last bit gets cut off here. We still have the last bits of comparing Jalen Waddle to some of the wide receivers around him, and I got a few stats to hit you guys with at the end here, per usual. But thank you guys for joining us. Let's continue on. Terry McLaurin against Jalen Waddle. I'm personally leaning Waddle because of the age, and I do think, again, they will secure the backup quarterback position. I get it though. If you're a win now team in Dynasty, that makes it very, very close for me. So Lee, let's send it your way first. I have a feeling who you might answer.
I mean, yeah, I can't take him over Terry right now. Again, kind of back to that point, I do expect that under this regime, you're going to see more talent added at the wide receiver position, but that connection to a phenom quarterback it's too good. I mean, he's wide receiver 6. I'm not sure if this is half point PPR or full point I'm looking at, but I got him at wide receiver 6 on the
I'm looking
season.
at half 6. Yeah.
He's been very consistent with just terrible quarterback play his entire career. He's never had a season with more than 7 touchdowns, and he has 6 already halfway through the season. He's made some really incredible catches. Like I said, he's going to be the wide receiver 1 for Jaden Daniels for, I would say, at least the next 2 seasons. He is 29, but his style of play, it doesn't overly rely on speed. Incredible hands, very, very precise route running. And that's the type of wide receiver that can play into his early 30s and still, not lose production. He's having a career year right now. And, I would just maybe it's a bit homer. I mean, obviously I watch him every week, but I'm so happy for the guy to finally have a quarterback that can get him the ball. Because, I mean, he languished in quarterback hell for quite some time.
Yes, his entire career.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are 2 completely different players. If, you're looking to roster either of them, you're not really looking for Terry, I think, necessarily for super long term. I think, honestly, he does have a little more dynasty value than people are giving him. But, there's still some uncertainty. They could bring us in some other people. But, I mean, Waddle's, to me, is definitely the more long play. Terry's the more now, next year kind of play.
For sure, yeah. We're just running through them too, because I also agree. This is not a trade you're looking to make unless you're clearly the win now or trying to buy low. Terry McLaurin at wide receiver 27. We were talking about the contract for a second there. He's got, obviously he's not going anywhere this year. He is only under contract 1 more year. $23.6 million due in 2025 with a dead cap of 11.2. They're gonna keep him. He's the main ingredient in this passing attack. He is freshly 29 right now. So by the end of the season next year, he will still only be 30 in the NFL with a promising team that had just made the leap from being last in their division to where you guys are. Yeah, at least chugging. The Commanders are chugging.
Train has left the station, maybe.
I am now chugging.
Yeah, honestly, though, something that worries me, but I don't have a drink in front of me.
We're chugging.
But something that worries
me. Fucking Mason.
About Terry is Washington potentially bringing someone else in next year. Looking at who's free agents at the wide receiver position next year, T. Higgins. That just kind of someone who just kind of screams out to me. A young kind of wide receiver has really proven himself. They could go after someone like him that could hurt Terry in the long run. I think that's his real biggest downside is that Washington is going to be looking to, with how good they're looking this year, and they already made the move for Lattimore. They're going to be making moves this offseason. Good for you.
Truthfully, though,
still going to be first month exits.
There's always one team that goes from worst to first over the last, I think it was 8 or 9 seasons. You guys are that team, and no one predicted you guys to be because Eagles, Dallas in the division. Love seeing it. Love an underdog. And I hate Deshaun Watson. So good that we can't beat those underdogs this year. You guys have given me legitimately. You guys are now my second team for the season at least.
Yes.
Yeah.
Usually, it was 4 games last year.
You never talked about that. Do you guys have a secondary team that you root for? Of course, not over your team, but
whoever's playing Dallas that week.
This. Yep. Okay. And Mason.
I mean, for right now, for me, it's kind of just wherever Baker Mayfield's at.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it
And
was
that's
the Browns for the while. It was the Browns for a while, but
appreciate that. And then we ruined it.
now I
We
hate the
do
Browns.
so well.
They got Mr. Touch on the team.
Growing up, it was the Packers for a while, just like historic team opposite of the Browns, so well ran. Oh, how I strive for that. And then Aaron Rodgers' whiny ass kind of ruined it for me a little bit. So off of that, no longer Packers number 2, but maybe Washington comes in, steps up, takes that number 2 spot. All right, so
Jaden Daniels is
the
a hard guy not to like. Just the way he carries himself, the way he plays. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but like he's just
no, I relaxed. He's like just like he's just there. He seems like
still,
one of the
dude,
guys can lead the
California
team.
cool.
The thing is, he played it so cool. They played a clip during the pre-draft process of Jaden Daniels talking about they were running through different coverages, and the coaches were being serious. They were like,
Yeah.
"Okay, so if they show this, but they switch to this, who are you looking at?" And he says, "I'm gonna throw a touchdown." And I was like, "That's not how the game works. Like, you need to know these things." So I
But
truly
Brian
did
Daboll
see
was
that.
being a dick during that video. Brian Daboll was rapid fire throwing shit at the quarterbacks. He knew he was
Right.
on TV. He was trying to show up the young quarterbacks and show how smart he was.
I could see
To
that
me,
from him too.
Dayball came across as a complete dickhead in that clip to me. And I am so glad to see them just languishing. I don't have any hate for the Giants. I do not like Brian Dayball.
I hear what you're saying too, because like it seemed like he was like trying to prove something. It's like, listen, you're an NFL coach. These are NFL rookies. Like, you don't have to prove anything. So I hear what you're saying there. But yeah, I truly did see that clip, and I was like, well, you need to know more than that. So I hope after 5 years of starting in college, you have more processing than that. And of course, he does. He's been absolutely murdering it. Let's get on to the bottom half. Oh, I forgot one guy right above him, wide receiver 26, DJ Moore or Jalen Waddle.
Ooh, ooh. DJ Moore is not happy right now. He's not. I mean,
And
I don't know if that's a
he
real
played for
injury or
the
not.
Panthers for so long and didn't complain. And now he's on the Bears. It's
And
like,
just got paid. Just
how
got a
bad is it?
huge bag of money.
Right. So I'm saying I'm actually not blaming DJ Moore at all. I'm just saying, like, how bad must it be with Matt Eberflus? No, Matt Eberflus was last year.
Shane
Shane
Waldron's the
Waldron.
offensive coordinator. He's
Dude,
the one that's
I
driving
wanted
me
to say it
crazy.
earlier, but we moved on. It's just like Shane Waldron has to be that next guy that is like booted down to like high school coaching. Like,
Yeah.
nobody in college even give him like anything, please.
He's going to be the tight ends coach for my kid's 9-10 Pee Wee team. You know, that's about we're going to put him at tight end.
Honestly though, yo, what's your kid's your page? What is the because he's doing his thing.
Oh yeah. So yeah, we'll shout him out. Let me pull it up. It's he's got a combined over 20,000 views over 3 videos now. The top one's right at 14,000. He's right under 100 subscribers. It is crap. Let me pull it. I think it's at Lincoln Gamer, but let me double check that.
I'll
At
ramble
Lincoln
up.
_gamer.
There we go. At Lincoln _gamer. Go and follow him. Give that kid a view. Let's go. I mean, he's popping off. I wish we had 20,000 views on this video. So
We're gonna get him a cake. When he gets to 100 subscribers, we're gonna get him a cake and celebrate for him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, and only give us the views if we deserve it. But I feel like we're giving some solid inside info here. DJ Moore, I also agree though. I'm taking Jalen Waddle over DJ Moore, even with Keenan Allen's contract likely to expire this season. I don't think they extend him. Does anybody think they extend Keenan Allen after the season he's had so far? Right. So, like, even with DJ Moore, likely just to be him and Romo Dunze, if they don't bring anybody notable in, there's still Cole Kmet, there's still DeAndre Swift. They're both pass catchers. They're both athletic. They're going to take away from DJ Moore. And he's only ever known being the dominant target on his team and still really never had a crazy target amount. So DJ Moore, this was the halfway point where I wanted to share some stats. We still got enough time. All right, we'll hit the 5 wide receivers before him. I just want to say, so Jalen Waddle, he has been a short yardage monster without Tyreek Hill on the team. We've seen him work in that aspect and really be proven as a especially in PPR, a dominant factor. 104 receptions in his rookie season sets an NFL record. Then he moves on. We get Tyreek Hill added to the team. Jalen Waddle plays 17 games in 2022 and then 14 games in 2023. He was wide receiver 7 in half PPR in that full season. And then in 2023, misses 3 games. He was wide receiver 34 at that point. The efficiency did go down a touch. He did have 4 less touchdowns in that time. A little bit can be attributed to injury, and we've seen him be a little bit banged up this season. Something to factor in for Dynasty. He will potentially miss a couple of games, but most NFL players do at this point. He's also shown the capacity to play through a lot of injuries, which is something you want in a Dynasty target. If Tua can stay healthy, if they do what I expect them to do next year and bring in somebody at least more reliable as the backup quarterback, I think that they really could go a long way. Jalen Waddle is young enough. He'll be 26 at the beginning of next year. So contract is there. He's going to be there. He is signed through the 2028 season, so that's 4 seasons away. He has a dead cap sitting around $8 million if he's cut in 2027. At that point, he would be due about in the mid-20s as far as his contract. I don't think he'll be cut. I think he will prove himself over those 2 seasons before then. If not, he still has 2 seasons with Miami before he's going to be cut. So, cut or traded. So, I think Jalen Waddle is severely underrated. I think that he's proven himself both as a deep threat with Tyreek there and the short to intermediate without him there, like the dominant wide receiver 1. And Tyreek's getting older. He's only going to have 1 more season after this. That before it seems like it's an inevitability to cut him if he's not producing at these same Tyreek levels. So that's wide receiver, the 5 wide receivers behind him. Now we have the 5 wide receivers in front of him. We'll try to speed it up a little bit here. I think it will be easier. T. Higgins or Jalen Waddle. T. Higgins is ranked 1 spot in front of him at wide receiver 24.
Higgins.
He doesn't have a landing spot. He's injured all the time. You go Higgins?
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it at all. And there's
I
no
love Higgins, but I would go Waddle.
I love Higgins when he's healthy, but he's not healthy frequently. And
that's why I don't think he's going to come to Washington, because I think he's going to get overpaid. The wide receiver market is crazy, and availability, reliability is one of the best traits you can have as an NFL player, and he's just not reliable.
And for fantasy, if you're injured, you're not scoring points. Tyreek or Waddle, I would go Tyreek here if I'm at all in the realm of winning it.
Tyreek.
Yeah, Tyreek.
I'm not going to answer because I'm not going to say Waddle for anyone.
Lad McConkey or Jalen Waddle? Mason, answer.
McConkey.
You would take McConkey?
Yeah.
All right, so
I think I would take McConkey because he's tied to Justin Herbert, and he looks like the wide receiver 1 for the Chargers.
Mason says no against T. Higgins and McConkey. I'll take like a double or nothing bet that Waddle outscores both of them next season.
We're making next season bets.
Yeah, well, it's Dynasty. It's Dynasty right now.
Yeah. I think for 2027.
I mean, it's Dynasty though.
Yeah.
Are you that confident, Mason? I'm taking 2 for 1 here, but you have to take double the punishment, whatever it may be.
Okay.
All right, love it. And then we go George Pickens, wide receiver 21, or Jalen Waddle.
Waddle.
Waddle for sure.
I actually might go Waddle over Pickens.
There you go, Mason, you fucking asshole. And then Chris Olave or Jalen Waddle.
Olave. I mean, if he doesn't get it,
He's the Tua of wide receivers.
Yeah.
Derek
I'm
Carr's
going
trying to get
Waddle.
that man killed. I agree with Mike Thomas.
Right.
That
And
was
Carr still
was
do a lot of money.
quarterback malpractice.
You guys see Michael Thomas's tweets?
Yes, he
Oh
went
my
off.
god.
Did you see
That's
Derek
worth a read
Carr's
if you haven't
response?
read it?
Did you see Derek Carr's response? They asked him about it in the press conference.
Really quick, I'm sorry. I do want to hear more about this. I just want to answer this question before our guy hopefully doesn't leave. Reese Epstein, hopefully not related. I heard that enough. McLaurin or Pickens, PPR. He didn't say dynasty or redraft, so let's just answer both. In dynasty, I am gonna go Pickens because of the age. But if you're a win now team, go McLaurin. If this is redraft, then 1000% McLaurin.
McLaurin and on both. I mean, again, maybe I'm a homer, but I just see the ceiling of being a top. He's 6 right now, but just a top 10 wide receiver for the next 2 to 3 seasons. I don't, unless the Steelers dramatically improve their quarterback situation. I just don't see that ceiling for George Pickens.
Yeah. All right. So last on
McLaurin's
Olave,
awesome at football. He's really, really good.
he's awesome, dude. And him and DJ Moore have both been amazing and have been fucked by
And he
quarterbacks.
has no diva about him. He is a consummate professional. He is the leader. Obviously, you have a rookie quarterback, but that's why they're going to re-sign him. He's just a phenomenal leader for that offense and the team as a whole.
Yeah. And he asked, even though Pickens has a much easier schedule, I've been looking at that. The Steelers have a very easy schedule moving forward with some tough matchups mixed in. George Pickens is already boomer bust. Mike Williams added to the team. Very similar styled player, even though he's older. Very similar styled. We talked about that earlier, where even if one of the bomb receptions go to Mike Williams, that is that big play that's taken away from George Pickens that typically makes his day. Pittsburgh's second to last in terms of pass attempts per game, where we have Washington sitting at not too much in front of them, actually. They're at 26th compared to Pittsburgh at 31st. McLaurin's the guy. There's nobody there to compete for the targets. Zach Ertz is the primary tight end. He's not going deep. It's like no one's competing with McLaurin for those deep targets. All right. Did anybody have anything different to say on that?
I don't know. I mean, the Eagles games right now over the last 4 weeks, they are the best team against wide receivers. But remove those 2 games. There's a schedule there. The Steelers defense is the next scariest defense, but they're middle of the pack. You get 2 games against Dallas, which is a bottom 5 defense. You get the Falcons, which is a bottom 10 defense. You get the Saints, which is a bottom 12 defense, who just traded away their best defensive player.
That's going down.
That are very still favorable. And again, like you said, the Steelers just traditionally are so much of a run-heavy team.
Yeah.
And they have a better defense, so they're going to need to throw the ball less.
On top of all of it, Arthur Smith. Period.
Arthur Smith or Cliff Kingsbury, who do you want calling the plays for your pass catcher?
It's such a sad side-by-side. Cliff's, I mean, they're doing well enough, but I know that if you guys had, the Shanahan offense in place right now, especially for a rushing quarterback like that, whew.
Cliff is probably the assistant of the year right now.
I don't know, man. You guys, your red zone efficiency has been pretty garbage.
There's been a couple of games, but there's an argument to be had. It's because of how often they've gotten in the red zone. You're getting in the red zone so often. There's a couple of outlier games, but I think that improves with a rookie quarterback.
I mean, the fact that you guys are putting up the numbers that you are with a rookie quarterback it's impressive. This is the type of system that you want to target where there is one primary wide receiver, one tight end out. Zach Ertz sucked last week, but one tight end that's putting up consistent numbers, a running back that is the goal line like go to. If Brian Robinson is healthy and they are inside the 5, it is time for Brian Robinson. So,
third in the NFL in scoring right now, and ultimately, you try to score the most points.
Right. So to your point, you're getting to the red zone frequently. It's just inside of the red zone. It's not the most efficient when we're looking for fantasy. Like we want touchdowns. We need the touchdowns. But outside, Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin are killing it. No argument here. Lee's got this pissed off face on here. Lee,
don't you be smart, Cliff Kingsbury.
Remember how I was saying the Commanders might be my team too. I just need to be realistic for fantasy too. All right, that's gonna end it. Everybody, thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate. Come kick it next week. Have a drink with us. Talk some smack. Get in the comments. Anytime you guys comment, we are more than happy to answer your questions. So tune in next week. Yeah.
Real quick. So I just saw Reese's comment, the follow-up. He has the Daniels McLaurin stack. And in that situation, I absolutely don't break up that stack. There's no way I would break up that stack for Pickens. It seems like it's redraft.
Right. And we were already on the McLaurin side.
Yeah.
Like
the stack even adds
over Pickens in a vacuum, but definitely keep them if you have the stacks.
Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good to say stacks are valuable, especially on a successful offense. So everybody, have a great rest of your week. Hit us up if you guys have any questions. You can see our handles on this YouTube video. If you're out there in Atlanta still listening somehow on 99.1, we appreciate y'all. Get back to it. Have a great week. Let's go. Playoffs?
Hell victory. Damn, there went Dan.